Hello, you're watching Tell It Like It Is, and my name is Kathy Benuck. Today's show is part of a new series that we're doing that I'm calling the Final Sprint for the Gubernatorial nominations. And it actually will feature our second round of interviews with all those folks who do want to be the next governor of New Hampshire. The first series was titled Race to the State House, and we taped those shows back in May, and they are available for you to watch on the BCTV website at www.bedfordtv.com. And a show was done with each of the 5 candidates, the 2 Republicans, Ovid LaMontagne and Kevin Smith, and the 3 Democrats, Jackie Silly, Maggie Hassan, and Bill Kennedy. Now, in those shows, we discussed the backgrounds of each of the candidates and their major positions as they were formed at that point. And as time allowed, I asked each candidate basically the same general questions, just so viewers could kind of get a snapshot and compare them a little bit. Take the time to watch the shows, or even if you saw them before, watch them again. The primary election is coming right up upon us, and this is an important year. We are going to have a new governor in January, and it's really important for you to know each of the candidates and his or hers positions on very important issues. And again, the BCTV website is www.bedfordtv.com. Now, the series today is going to be a little bit different than that first series. First of all, I'm not going to waste precious time giving biographical information on each candidate at the start of each show, because that's already on those previous tapes. Secondly, while some questions may wind up being answered to asked to every candidate, primarily my questions will really be relevant to each candidate and to the evolving campaign of that candidate. Third, this series will not include Democratic candidate Maggie Hassan. We just simply could not arrive at a date and time that she would be able to join us, so it is what it is. And fourth, as I mentioned, no biographies will be provided at the beginning of this, so instead what I have been doing is telling people about the various endorsements that each of the candidates has received. Now, right now, my guest is Democratic candidate Bill Kennedy. This is Bill's first run for public office, so that alone sets him as unique in the whole campaign, because all the other 4 candidates have previously run and held office. When I asked Bill for a list of his endorsements, he replied that he swore off special interest and outside lobby support. And he said that essentially the party elites had predetermined candidate choices before he even wound up going into the election. Now, he's all along described himself as the guy who's going to appeal to the undeclared and the independents as a middle-of-the-road progressive. And he also has said that he is the true representative of the people and that his endorsees are the people. So, with that, Bill, it's good to see you again. I know you're chugging all around the state, and thanks for coming down to us.
My pleasure, as usual, Kathy. Always look forward to this.
And you're really into it now, all the way, huh? We're just
near 4 months of campaigning now.
Exactly.
People thought I would jump out early. But
I don't know. I never would have said that.
Outstanding.
Remember, I called you a very intriguing candidate and so on, and I knew you wouldn't jump out.
As I've evolved, even more intriguing than in the beginning.
Well, in my previous interview, I did ask you about the Affordable Care Act, also known as Obamacare.
Right.
And at that time, I looked back at the old tape and I'll quote you as saying inherently a good plan. Now, the act does call for the expansion of Medicaid, and here in New Hampshire, that could add 50,000 people to our Medicaid roll at a cost as high as, they're saying, $1.76 billion over the next 7 to 10 years. So my question to you is, the Supreme Court also earlier decided that states can't be forced to expand Medicaid.
Right.
Now, knowing now the numbers and the dollar signs, do you think that possibly, maybe as governor, you would want to not have New Hampshire be part of that expanded Medicaid?
No, just the opposite. I think we're evolving. Affordable Care Act is a good plan. Even President Obama had issue with the individual mandate, and that's the biggest concern for a lot of people. You know, a lot of people are being forced now to acquire insurance that weren't obligated before, and if they don't, there's a penalty. Unfortunately, a lot of those people still can't afford that, so it's still not a perfect system, and the opposition party demonizes it by calling Obamacare. It's not. It was a bipartisan effort. Matter of fact, the current Republican presidential candidate was developed in Massachusetts, and although I won't use Massachusetts as a good example for a lot of things, I think they did well with their medical care plan. And it's evolved to the point where it's a template for a successful plan. It's actually saving the money. Now that's my lead into this issue. By jumping in early, there are going to be some inherent costs by jumping in early, which I'm an advocate for, the Medicaid portion of it, and there are going to be some resulting savings on the back end of it because we're taking people out of the uninsured rolls now. So the people that are being provided for at the hospitals now that don't have any funds at all will be covered under the new broad Medicaid extension.
Do you think it actually comes to a figure even close, though, to that 1.76 billion?
No, I think that seems very high to me. I think initially there's going to be some costs, but I think over time we're going to reap the benefit through the savings by not having to cover the uninsured.
Okay, so you're still on board with it?
Oh, I'm big time on board. Matter of fact, at some point, you know, I'm going to jump out. You know, I'm provocative, and you know I jump out on sensitive issues. There's going to be a single payer system one of these days.
Now, why do you want that?
Why do I want it? No,
yes.
I think it's inevitable. I think people need to be protected. We need to have an umbrella. I'm a big fan of history, and I think we had this discussion before. If you don't cover everybody and you have the disparities between demographics within America, the wealthy, you know, the middle class and the poor, as the gaps widen, people become very disheartened, disenfranchised. And I'm not saying it would ever evolve to the likes of a French Revolution or an American Revolution, but if you don't include and wrap people in a protective umbrella, eventually they become disheartened and take possibly activist action. We need to take care of our people. To be good neighbors, we need to take care of our people. I think the single payer system has worked well in other countries. In some countries, not so well. I understand that, but it's something that we have to look at, and that's something I think we're going to evolve to.
Okay. Now, your website says that you support public funding of political campaigns. So I have to ask you this. Why do you think that I should pay for anyone's campaign?
Because it keeps out special interests, it keeps out lobbyists, and gives outstanding candidates that wouldn't run because of the fiscal limits, it allows them to run otherwise because of the public campaign financing. I would rather pay a little bit to have somebody that's credible running than somebody running that's backed by a lobbyist or big special interest, because that's where the money is coming from now. There are many great candidates out there. Maybe even you yourself would consider running if you had the backing of a public venue, fiscal venue. So I think had there been monies available, I think we would have had more people in the primary race. You would have had more options. You would have had quality people. I'm not saying that the current ones we have now are not quality, but many of them are motivated by special interests. And money's coming from outside of the state, and it incenses me when money outside the state, not representing the true New Hampshire advantage and interest, is influencing political action.
But wouldn't there be a possible negative side to it, that there would be candidates who could not be considered serious, who would do it as a folly, as something to do, and that, again, we would be paying for that campaign effort? That's
a good point. I mean, maybe there has to be some regulation in there. I'd have to think this through. But I know now that there are a lot of good people out there that aren't running because they don't have the funds. You know, I read prior to jumping in myself, I read other people's decisions to not run. The biggest one being the fiscal limitations of running. And many of the people that want to run are blue-collar people and rely on their income. If you don't have some form of money backing you, you're out of luck. I mean, there's no opportunity. So yes, in the extreme scenario that you just recounted, I would have a little bit of a concern, but there are many viable people out there that it would give the opportunity.
Okay. Now I wanted to hear your take on that.
Sure.
Now, your website indicates that you support the Claremont decision on educational funding.
Right.
But during our previous interview, you had indicated here that you support local control of schools and that you also were supporting legislative decisions on public educational funding. So when I read the website and I went back over and looked at our show again, there was a disconnect there.
Right.
So explain to me.
Really no disconnect. I believe everybody needs to be engaged in our education system.
Okay.
I truly believe, if it wasn't clear earlier, that the state needs to pay for it, or a good portion of it.
Yep.
I believe local communities should have engagement and involvement on making their school better. So adding whatever they want beyond the state's requirement for a baseline funding. Once we go to a state-funded education enterprise, we can relieve a lot of the property tax burden from the local municipalities. In fact, the voters of the local municipalities will determine how much budget goes to the school. So if they limit the amount that goes to the school, because the state's funding it now, that should have a corresponding 33 or 50% decrease in property taxes. That's my view. And then back to the issue of who should be engaged with control. Local communities should have a say, legislature should have a say, and then you need the courts as a backup only when things get out of hand. And with this legislature, it came very close to getting out of hand. So I think we need those checks and balances, local control, legislature engagement, and then courts in case something goes wrong.
Okay. Now, a couple of weeks ago, you caused quite a stir down in Salem. I read about you in the Tribune, which is, of course, Salem is the home of Rockingham Park. And I believe you were speaking at a meeting of the maybe Salem Chamber of Commerce.
Right.
And you got them all worked up when you took a really strong stance against expanded gambling. So, having mentioned that, if gambling revenues could be targeted specifically for something, not just into the great money pit, but specifically targeted for perhaps public education or whatever, would that soften your objections to expanded gambling, or do you feel as though it's just a bad idea all the way around?
I believe it's a bad idea because had that been introduced 15 or 20 years and you developed a destination location casino, that's when it was in its prime, and the revenues were fairly reasonable and respectable throughout our country. In the economic downturn, you're not going to reap the benefit of a casino that you would have years ago, and every casino is showing a decline right now in revenue. So why build something in the downturn of a market? You want to build it when it's flourishing. So maybe it should have been considered 20 years ago, and I don't know what happened then in the state because by virtue of my military time I was outside of the state, so I'm not sure what happened with the discussion. I am 1% open to it, and I tell everybody I'm not totally closed off, because when you close yourself off, you limit alternatives, and you're not a good candidate. You got to be kind of open to everything. If somebody could tell me that there won't be social ills, that there won't be crime associated with it, that there won't be corruption, that there won't be more addiction, and they'd be hard pressed to prove that. Because the preponderance of gamblers are middle class, and many times lower middle class, that see it as an out, as a hope. And unfortunately for many people, it doesn't become a hope. Now, should we be the brothers and sisters and protectors of the gamblers? You know what? We need to look sometimes at what's not working and then make the right decision. At this point, I don't think it's a good move, and I think there's other alternatives for the park. Very viable alternatives, amusement, concerts, maybe in a down market those things won't work, but I guarantee you that there's probably other opportunities to bring enterprise and businesses into Salem.
And to your defense, when I said that you got them all excited, you weren't exactly talking to an impartial audience, because obviously a lot of folks in Salem very much support Rockingham becoming a
Many people know my stance on this particular issue, and I would have expected a bigger turnout, a more vehement turnout in support of gambling if they truly wanted it. It was fairly moderate turnout, and from what I understand, the turnout's been fairly moderate across the board. And the people most adamant were the people that truly benefited the most: the Salem Chamber of Commerce, the park itself, and then some politicians that are engaged in legalizing or getting it instituted within the state, expanding it. We were not in agreement with those small elements within the crowd, but there were actually people in the crowd that actually agreed with my position as well.
I don't doubt that, yeah. But as I said, the Tribune kind of really played the story.
Oh,
Big
yeah.
time.
Yeah. I thought the article was relatively benign. They alluded to the fact that I got beat up, but I think I counted.
I don't think you got beat
No,
up.
I don't think I did either. I think I count.
Somehow I can't picture that happening.
No, and I gave them my position. It was fairly neutral, and I tried to keep it civil. I didn't want to get contentious, and there's that 1%. If truly I saw something viable, maybe I could shift, but highly unlikely.
Okay. And as you well know, one of the huge problems in the state of New Hampshire right now is the $4.2 billion unfunded liability of public employee pensions. What are your ideas with that?
We got to figure out a solution. It's because of the municipalities and the states giving their portion is the reason we're so far behind. They haven't been doing that. And in a down economy, you look to where you can make the cuts. Unfortunately, you have a contract with these people. They depend on that contract, and your integrity and your credibility is jeopardized when you tell somebody you're going to contribute to a pension plan and then you don't because of economic downturn or whatever the case. Is there a middle road on this? I think there is. And I think we need to look for that middle road and try to get some revenue in there so we can protect the pensions. But I think we also need discussions from the unions as well, where we can reach a happy middle and make this work. $4.2 billion is a lot of money, and I think, based on what I've read, their current pension only gets us through till 2020 or 2025, and then beyond that, the workers have to start looking at alternatives for pension. So that has me concerned, kind of like our Social Security system. There's an evolution that's very similar to the pension illnesses in our state. Social Security has those same illnesses leading up to maybe 2030, 2035, but eventually even Social Security is not going to be sustainable.
Well, you're right. Now, as you know, New Hampshire voters will soon get to vote on a constitutional amendment to prohibit the imposition of a personal income tax. Now, you have refused to take the pledge against an income tax, and actually you've referred to the tax pledge early and often as bordering on criminal.
Yes.
If voters approve the constitutional amendment, how do you see that affecting your goal, your campaign goal, to reduce residential property taxes by 50%?
I don't see it being an issue, because if they voted in, it's unconstitutional. Because currently in the New Hampshire Constitution, it talks about fair share. Property tax burden on a selective group within the state, the property owners, is not fair share, because it leaves out a lot of people within the state. Once again, sales tax, not fair share, because no matter what the percentage of sales tax you have, it's a bigger percentage burden on the lower income than it is on the wealthy. So the one thing I want to put out to the voters, no matter what happens with this amendment, I think it's going to be ruled unconstitutional, because the Constitution talks about fair share. The only tax that's fair and broad-based and covers everybody, and it's all-inclusive, is income tax. And I think we can implement a nominal income tax and give people reductions on property tax, which, by the way, would open the American dream up for a lot of people. A lot of people cannot buy a home or cannot keep their home because of the exorbitant property taxes. This will give them an opportunity. Now, the counter argument is, once we implement the income tax, then the government's going to run rampant. That's not the case under my tenure. I can't guarantee any future government, but under my tenure, I will try to lock it in at a certain percentage of income, and the caveat there have to be a corresponding reduction in property tax before I would even consider implementing an income tax. But once again, fair share is the word, and that should resonate with everybody, because it is in the New Hampshire Constitution.
So you really do think it'll be ruled unconstitutional if the voters approve it?
If the voters approve it, and I think that's a very slim probability, first of all. I don't believe they will.
You don't think the voters will approve it?
No, and
really?
I'll tell you why. We need revenue. Where are we going to get it from? A casino? Casino won't give us everything we need. Other possible sources, legalization, sin tax or something like that, that's not going to get us the revenue we need. So the only consideration is raising property taxes or providing an alternative tax.
Or cutting costs.
Or cutting costs. I mean, I think we've already done that. I've discussed this as well. Fiscal responsibility is important. Efficiency is important. But you don't want to cut into muscle. And I think we've already started cutting into muscle. We've done things wrong in the state. I won't deny that. I think we've cut well into the muscle. We need to cut fat and stop doing the muscle. So, Anyway, so I agree with you. Yes, we can make cuts, but somebody's going to suffer. Unions will suffer, social programs will suffer, educations will suffer. It'll get to the point where we've cut so bare that we've lost the New Hampshire advantage.
Okay. Now, you've called for more efficiency in government.
Yes.
And as we all learned recently, the state has not exactly done a super job of monitoring the use of electronic benefit cards.
Right.
And we've learned that they've been used to purchase cigarettes and liquor, have been used to get cash at casinos, bingo halls, head shops, adult entertainment centers. And they've even had wide and repeated use over a period of months in some cases in places like Florida and Virgin Islands. Now, Terry Smith, who, as I'm sure you know, is the head of the Division of Family Assistance for the New Hampshire Department of HHS, says that to address the problem, he needs a bigger infrastructure, more money, more staff, and bigger travel budgets. That he needs all those things. What do you say to that?
I say you don't need them.
Okay.
I say you put out regulation.
Okay.
You have enterprises within the state follow the regulation.
Okay.
You have enterprises outside of the state follow, because I've heard that the EBTs have been used outside of the state, matter of fact, in vacation resort areas as well. The people that use them are entitled to vacation. I don't deny that. But the EBT card should be used for necessities. I mean, they're given to people that have limited fiscal means. So they should be used for necessities. I don't, as a taxpayer myself, I don't want to be paying for people's vices. I don't want to be paying for, matter of fact, in federal level or state level, I don't want to be paying for people's vacations if it's above and beyond a necessity to get the job done. And there have been plenty of issues in the media where even federal and state employees have abused benefits. So just targeting those that earn revenue through the EBT, it's not earned, but it's given to them. I think we need to do it across the board. We need to regulate the EBT. We need to regulate the waste within state government, and hopefully that'll correspond over at some point to federal government. So yes, there needs to be an address. Does he need extra enterprise or infrastructure to maintain that? I don't think so.
And, you know, truth be told, obviously somebody who's using an EBT in a strip club, for example, it's not to buy Cheerios and milk for the kids.
No, of course, and I have an issue with that. If you want to do those types of things, do them with your own money. Don't use it with state-provided or federally provided funds because you're limited. You have limited means. I mean, I don't want them doing it. I don't want them using my tax money for that purpose. And if I had to rely on EBT, it would be used for necessities, not for all these vices.
And we've seen also in New Hampshire, it has come out this year, how much fraud there has been for Medicare recipients.
Yes.
So, I mean, there seems the closer we're looking, the more pockets we're finding. And all of these things are starting to add up to some very serious money. Do you think a strong government, a strong governor who can start digging into that stuff can save so much money on all of these things that somebody like you wouldn't have to favor an income tax? Just a question.
No, and it's a very legitimate question. You may have heard me in other media outlets that I'm hard on nepotism, hard on cronyism,
which has also been a problem with
favoritism. You know what? We need to weed it out. There's corruption everywhere, and I don't think there's any doubt, based on my background, that I'll be a dogged and determined governor to weed out some of that corruption and inefficiency. There are areas we can definitely save money. But what we need to do is save the property owners, because there are many moderate income property owners that are being burdened with a large portion of fiscal responsibility to the tunes of 40 to 60%, depending on which statistic you see, is being taken from property owners to pay for state fiscal requirements. So I see that as an unfair share. I want to address that again. That's why I will always focus on income tax, because that is the fair share, and everybody is engaged. The lowest segments of our society pay 6 to 8% of their income toward property tax. The wealthy pay somewhere on the 0.5 to 0.2% based on their income. To me, that's not fair share. That's disproportionate, and it's widening. Every year it's widening, and that has me concerned.
Now, as the clock is winding down, as you can see, what issue would you like to throw out there that we haven't covered either in this show or the past show, and that you really feel strongly about, that you feel that voters should know your stance on it? And I know you have a lot of opinions on a lot of things, so now's the time to kind of jump in and give you strong ones.
One that's come out recently, and it's been discussed pretty heavy in the media, is my position being a little more liberal on the issue of marijuana.
Okay.
Being a law enforcement guy by background and having fought in the drug war, marijuana is not the bane everybody plays it up to be. And I think it has to stop being a criminal issue. I think it has to stop being a political issue. We're going to
Can I just interrupt you to ask, from medicinal purposes, or just
no,
totally legalize it?
Legalization,
that
period.
I could walk into Walgreens or someplace and buy it?
Yes, and I'm going to lead into that because medicinal purpose has its value.
Okay.
Hemp has its value.
Okay.
You know, social consumption of alcohol, probably the biggest bane in our society, but we still do it. By the way, I drink an occasional beer and an occasional glass of wine, so I don't have an issue with that. But I don't have an issue with marijuana because it pacifies people. Being a law enforcement officer, when I respond to an incident, what is the usual precursor to an aggravated situation? Alcohol. It makes people less smart, makes people more agitated. So that's a bane on society. Marijuana does just the opposite. It
makes them mellow?
It makes them mellow, relaxes them. Matter of fact, it makes them compliant. Many times they'll just put out their wrists and they're ready for you to arrest them.
I have to admit, I had not heard that before.
But we spend hundreds of billions of dollars combating marijuana, which is not the bane of our society. Meth is a major issue in this state. Synthetic drugs, bath salts, is becoming a major bane in the state. Prescription drugs, major bane in the state. So let's legalize marijuana, regulate it, you know, so we're putting good product out there, and then tax it, because right there is a major
so
revenue
big bucks
source.
To the state.
Major revenue boon.
Wow.
Yep.
And I think you're the only candidate with that in your platform.
I think I am.
I think you are.
And it's an evolution that's going to occur. Whether it occurs under my platform, my time, is yet to be seen.
See, this is why I tell you you're provocative.
You know what? I jump out on the right issues. I'm the right choice, and I'm out there. I represent the people that need to be represented. By the way, law enforcement, when you allow something, when you go to the medical marijuana step, it's harder for law enforcement to enforce, because now you got to kind of divide who's legally entitled and who's not entitled. And that's California's having a big issue with that right now.
Okay, we literally are running down into our last minute. So I want to give you the chance to appeal directly to the voters. Tell them why Bill Kennedy should get their vote on September 11th.
I'm a blue-collar guy. You know, I feel the same pains the common people of New Hampshire feel. I'm not an advocate for increased taxes. I'm an advocate for fair taxes. I'm liberal on a lot of issues. I'm conservative on some. I've got a plan for fiscal responsibility in this state. I can bring more businesses into this state. I've got federal background. People claim that the limited political experience is a handicap, but I don't think so, because Governor Lynch had very limited background as well. So I think I'm the people's choice, and they can find out more about me at www.billkennedyforgovernor.com.
I was going to give that for you. Good job.
No, I appreciate it.
Well, thank you for being here. You're always a great deal of interest to talk to, absolutely, and we have to have you back again.
Oh, I'd love to be back.
All right. Well, as you can tell, you know, the name of this show is Tell It Like It Is, and you have to love somebody like Bill, because he definitely tells it like it is, so he's an ideal guest for a show like this. Thanks for watching. Until the next time, you tell it like it is. Bye-bye.